Hi, students. This is Miss Cohn here. I hope you're having a fantastic week. This week's narrative portfolio is the last portfolio sort of practice assignment that we're going to do before we hit the final narrative paper next week. That's going to be more formal. And you are either going to take one of these practice memoirs or pieces of fiction you've written and turn it into something better, or you are going to start a new memoir or short story next week and make it a formal piece of writing that's at least 2 to 5 pages. So this week we are going to sort of practice some of the skills we've talked about in the form of short story writing. So here are your options. Okay, this portfolio needs to be fiction, which means made up. It needs to be a short story versus memoir, which is about your own life. All right, so your first option is to take the plan. You created a plan for a short story last week, and you can turn it into a partial short story. You can write the whole short story if you want to, or you can just write a page yourself of it and start it with the thought in mind that you might finish it next week. Option 2 is you can write one of the missing stories for one of the mysteries of Harris Burdick photos presented in class today. I'm going to go through it with you online here as well for the virtual students. You're going to make sure you use the line that goes with the picture as the first sentence in your story, and then use the pictures as inspiration for your story. A lot of these stories will probably end up turning into horror or fantasy type stories. But let me explain to you, if you click on this link, it'll show you what the mysteries of Harris Burdick is. It is kind of, there is kind of an urban legend or folklore surrounding a certain group of pictures. And so let me just read this to you so you understand what the mysteries of Harris Burdick is. In 1984, I wrote the following as an introduction to the mysteries of Harris Burdick. I first saw the drawings in this book a year ago in the home of a man named Peter Wenders. Though Mr. Wenders is retired now, he once worked for a children's book publisher, choosing the stories and pictures that would be turned into books. 30 years ago, a man called at Peter Wenders' office, introducing himself as Harris Burdick. Mr. Burdick explained that he had written 14 stories and had drawn many pictures for each one. He'd brought with him just one drawing from each story to see if Mr. Wenders liked his work. Peter Wenders was fascinated by the drawings. He told Burdick he would like to read the stories that went with them as soon as possible. The artist agreed to bring the stories the next morning. He left the 14 drawings with Wenders, but he did not return the next day, or the day after that. Harris Burdick was never heard from again. Over the years, Wenders tried to find out who Burdick was and what happened to him, but he discovered nothing. To this day, Harris Burdick remains a complete mystery. His disappearance is not the only mystery left behind. What were the stories that went with these drawings? There are some clues. Burdick had written a title and caption for each picture. When I told Peter Wenders how difficult it was to look at the drawings and their captions without imagining a story, he smiled and left the room. He returned with a dust-covered cardboard box. Inside were dozens of stories, all inspired by the Burdick drawings. They'd been written years ago by Wenders' children and their friends. I spent the rest of my visit reading these stories. They were remarkable, some bizarre, some funny, some downright scary. In the hope that other children will be inspired by them, the Burdick drawings are reproduced here for the first time. Over the past 12 years, I've received hundreds of Burdick stories written by children and adults. These efforts show that the words and pictures of Mr. Burdick are indeed inspirational. Classroom teachers and aspiring writers have expressed their desire for larger reproductions of Mr. Burdick's pictures. To that end, this portfolio has been produced. There is, however, another reason for this edition. Peter Wenders and I were certain that the publication of the Mysteries of Harris Burdick would lead to the discovery of information about Mr. Burdick. 10 years passed without a single clue surfacing. Then, in 1994, I received a letter from a Mr. Daniel Hirsch of North Carolina. He described himself as a dealer in antique books and shared with me the following story. In 1963, he learned of a collection of books being offered for sale in Bangor, Maine. These books were located in the library of a grand but run-down Victorian home. Mr. Hirsch remembers learning that the owner of the house, an elderly woman, had died recently, leaving the house and its contents to the local Animal Rescue League. Impressed with the collection he found, Mr. Hirsch purchased the entire library. This included a large mirror whose wooden frame was decorated with carved portraits of characters from Through the Looking Glass. 2 years ago, this mirror, still in possession of Mr. Hirsch, fell from the wall of his bookshop and cracked. Removing the shards of glass, Mr. Hirsch made a remarkable discovery. Neatly concealed between the mirror and its wooden back was the drawing of a young magician that is reproduced here. This drawing is identical in size and technique to Burdick's other pictures. Like those, it is unsigned and has a title and caption written at the margin and the bottom. The title on this piece identifies it as another picture from the story, Missing in Venice. I have no doubts regarding its authenticity. Unfortunately, Mr. Hirsch, who has an uncanny memory for the names and locations of the books in his shop, cannot remember the details of this trip to Bangor in 1963. In fact, he is no longer certain the old Victorian house was in Bangor. However, he is certain he still owns one of the books that came from the library where he purchased the mirror. It is a rare early edition in the original Italian of Collodi's Pinocchio. Inside the front cover is a bookplate bearing the inscription, Hazel Bartlett, her book. All efforts to find information about a Hazel Bartlett of Bangor have proven fruitless. Rather than solving the mystery of Harris Burdick, the discovery of the 15th drawing has only served to make it more perplexing. Chris Van Allsburg, December 21st, 1995, Rhode Island. All right, and so if you look through these pictures and the illustrations, these are the drawings. You can use these as inspiration for stories millions of other people have. And I'll even let you borrow the first line. You could even use this as a title, the title of the picture, if you wanted to, as a title for your story. He had warned her about the book. Now it was too late. This one always makes me think of the movie, The Never-Ending Story. I love this one, The Flying Nun here. The fifth one ended up in France. I wonder where all the rest of the nuns went. This one is called Just Dessert. She lowered the knife, and it grew even brighter. That one's making for a creepy story there. Oh, what a beautiful, beautiful picture. Captain Torrey. He swung his lantern 3 times, and slowly the schooner appeared. Wish I had that power. This one is called Oscar and Alphonse. She knew it was time to send them back. The caterpillar softly wiggled her hand, spelling out, goodbye. I wonder how they became good friends. The house on Maple Street. It was a perfect liftoff. Well, who knew the house was a spaceship? This one's called Third Floor Bedroom. It all began when someone left the window open. That's better than she woke up in the morning. Yeah? Under the rug. 2 weeks passed, and it happened again. Missing in Venice. This time, she'd gone too far. What'd she do? Archie Smith, boy wonder. A tiny voice asked, is he the one? Who's the voice, and where did it come from? A strange day in July. He threw with all his might, but the third stone came skipping back. Well, what's in the water? And how did it come skipping back? Missing in Venice. Even with her mighty engines in reverse, the ocean liner was pulled further and further into the canal. What an interesting photo. Oh my goodness. What destruction. Another place, another time. If there was an answer, he'd find it there. Well, where's there? Where is he going? And how is this train at our little, what would they call this? I forget what they call this. How is it going? And where is it going? And what are they looking for? uninvited guest. His heart was pounding. He was sure he had seen the doorknob turn. My heart would be pounding too, I think. What's behind the secret door? The harp. So it's true, he thought. It's really true. What's true? The magical land with the harp? Okay, so you could use one of these stories as inspiration. If you do, be sure to use the line, the caption is the first line, and you could use the title of the photo as the title of your story if you want. You don't have to, but definitely use the caption underneath as the first line of your story, and use the picture as inspiration if one of these 15 pictures as inspiration if you'd like to pick option 2. And then option 3 is you can select a photo from the internet and write a story based on the photo you choose. Be sure to copy and paste the link of the photo into Narrative Portfolio 5 so that I know what the photo is. Okay, so copy and paste it or link it into Narrative Portfolio 5. Oftentimes we use what we see as inspiration for our stories. Literally, sometimes we use photos as inspirations to stories or poetry. So again, you have 3 different options here. Okay, you can take the plan you created in Narrative Portfolio 4. You can turn it into a short story or the beginning of a short story. Again, I want to pay at least a page of story from each of you for this portfolio. You can take one of the missing stories from the Mysteries of Harris Burdick and write that story based on that photo, or you can select a photo from the internet, copy and paste it into Narrative Portfolio 5, and then give me at least a page of short story based on the photo, using the photo as inspiration. Regardless of what option you choose, you want to make sure you keep in mind all the skills we've discussed and practiced so far in class. First of all, you want to establish some sort of setting description as a means to create and establish some kind of mood. You want to gradually introduce the characters. Don't start out a story with Julie had brown hair and brown eyes and was 5'6" and weighed 550 pounds. She liked softball and enjoyed reading and play guitar in her spare time. That's boring. Okay, those details should be gradually weaved into the action of a story. Okay. Add descriptive detail. You want to show the reader the story rather than tell. We've talked about using effective dialogue. Okay, make sure you've got your plot elements, the exposition, the conflict, climax, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. You want to make sure you pace your story well. Okay, and you also want to make sure you are purposeful about a point of view. Are you writing third-person omniscient, where the reader would get into the heads of a lot of characters? Are you writing third-person omniscient, where you're limited, where you're using third-person pronouns, but it's limited to the perspective of a character or two? Are you using first-person, where you become a character and the narrator in the story? Think and be intentional about point of view as well with this, okay? All right. So again, writing fiction, writing a short story, at least starting one at least a page or so of short story for Narrative Portfolio 5 based on one of the options. It doesn't have to be perfect by any means. And then again, next week, we're either going to be choosing to write memoir or short story. We can take something or parts of something we've already written for these portfolios and develop it and make it better, or we can start from scratch next week. That's up to you and as an individual. And yeah, good luck with your writing this week. Hope you have a great week.